I have built a number of indoor walls, by the way.
I appreciate that. It just happens that I was in a deep conversation in Portland, Oregon 2 days ago about the value of risk and miseducated experiences. Your answer was far superior to my answer. It's much more sophisticated. I thank you for that. We've got about 4 or 5 minutes of you before we open it up to the crowd. I'm assuming that there are a host of people out here that could benefit from a couple of directional comments. Okay, this is it. Tell us, give us a couple of things that help to synthesize it all. And I don't want a recipe for bun cake or something.
As I said, I knew 6 months ago they invited me to do this. And I knew, ooh. And I've been toying with thousands, at least 100 different ways to do this. We decided to do this format yesterday. But one of my first ways of visualizing it 6 months ago, why don't we do that dialogue thing we do in the Northeast? And the first, without even thinking about, okay, who's going to do it? Garvey came to mind, no question. It was just, bang, it was automatic. What was I going to say?
I don't know, but it feels good, so just keep talking. I was asking you if you could lead us with a couple of
I talked to a lot of people about how to get help. I like to ask for help. If I'm uncomfortable or if I want to look, I'm pretty good at making decisions. I'm pretty good at in researching opinions, and I'm not afraid to ask for help. So I asked for help from a lot of people. And if I could summarize the answer quickly, was be yourself. They are there to honor you, but don't do anything except be yourself. Well, I guess that's probably one of the best. No man has a good enough memory to be a successful liar. Who said that? Abe Lincoln. No man has a good enough memory to be a successful fake. You have to be yourself. And if it doesn't fit, don't try to put your square peg into that round hole. Go find a square hole. You cannot fake it. You've got to be yourself. But you've got to be able to define yourself. And that's one of the functions of what we're trying to do. Story, true. First Outward Bound course, that guy out there helped me. I had never been on solo.
You're talking about Bob?
Bob MacArthur, right back there. Dear friend. I had never been on solo. We had 52 kids on course. We had 5 watches and so forth and so on. And so here we are in northern New Hampshire, up in the Dartmouth Ranch, and I asked if I could go on solo because I'd never experienced it. We got the staff to cover that, so I was able to live through 3 nights, 32 below, 52 below, and 48 below. Now, I'm proud of that. But boy, did that question me. Did that force me to, what the hell am I doing out here? Willie's internal naval contemplation. Holy schmoly. I mean, that made me think about things that I had never had a chance to think about before. And I had done all kinds of things in my life. I remember playing football in college. The college coach forced us to get dressed ahead of time and lay down on the gym floor for half an hour before the football game. Well, when was the last time you stood in line for combat? What a hell of a place to be. Well, I've done all kinds of things, and I wasn't naive. I was like 45 years old, 42 years old at the time. And I'd done a lot of things in my life, but I'd never done something that was so demanding for survival. And boy, did that help me figure out who the hell I was and what was important. And that's important to you. You need to know why you're doing what you're doing. You need to know how to do what you're doing. My dad, among other things, taught me, or I learned from him. Same thing? Yeah, I think he taught me and I learned it. That to be available to the feedback that people give you when you are asking them or showing them to do something, i.e. be a good people teacher. Read their responses. You need to know your material to the point where your mind is not occupied with what comes next. You need to be comfortable with the way you're presenting it, so you're not worried whether you're going to bump your head or not. Now your senses and your brain is able to receive the feedback, probably mostly body language, that these kids are giving you, so you know whether they're hearing you or not, or maybe even know what they are hearing. You've got to be yourself.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And you do that well, buddy.
It's not that I haven't tried other people.
I have to.
All right, I know there are other folks out here who have questions, concerns, comments, and I'd like to use the precious...
I deserve about 2 minutes at the end, please.
Well, we'll see about that.
Reserve, not deserve.
Anyway, so if we could open this up, it's not that large a room. I've checked the acoustics. If you scream and stand on your chair and generally make a complete idiot of yourself, you should be here. Anyway, let's have affirmations for Keith and questions for Keith.
Tom.
One of Keith's favorite quotations that he used when we worked together and I had a high school class was, "Let me do something today for someone whose face I will never see." And Dan asked people to raise hands by people who knew Keith, and I now work in an alternative high school, and one of the kids said, "So where the hell are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to Arizona." "How come?" "Well, I'm going to go see a guy who taught me about education." He's your grandfather of education. And these are the people who Keith has never seen. He's never been to my school, but these are the people who are benefiting from Keith. And I think your charge is to go out and do the same thing. Because they won't know who the hell Keith King is, but you do. Thank you, Keith.
Let me just say, Keith, you're going to have to, unless it's a question, you're just going to have to sit and take this. I'll determine whether it's a question.
This I will frame as a question, if I may. This is the Kurt Hahn address, right?
I hope so.
So Pete, my question is, did you meet Kurt Hahn when he was in the States? And whether you did or not.
Can I answer that first?
Yeah.
Because I won't remember the first question. No, I never met the gentleman.
Okay.
I have met 4 people who did.
Good.
Josh Miner being one, and Josh was a very close associate. He was one of the major source of bringing Outward Bound to Colorado in 1962, that type of thing. And I knew and worked with Josh probably 6 or 7 times over a period of 20 years.
Good. So you learned from Josh and the others a great deal about Hahn.
Yes.
So my question is, as a follow-up, what do you think was the most important belief or idea that Hahn brought to the world of education that's still relevant today?
Hidden subtly and maybe sometimes very deeply in Hann's methodology. He didn't articulate it very often, at least the stuff I've read. He did. Now and then it was a little gem that would pop up. Was, if I may be so bold as to say that what I have said in the last half hour would be a summary of what he was trying to do. But I think he knew he was doing it, he just didn't. I once had an idea, very, very clear. It took me about 2 weeks and about 15 tries to get to the point where I was satisfied that it expressed the idea in noises. And it was very, very clear up here, but I just... So I believe, yes, I believe that my interpretations of, well, my comments today and what I believe were highly influenced by Hann's behaviors, not necessarily his utterances. And I also believe that my philosophy is what I do, not what I think I say I do. I don't know. I don't think I'm not trying to dodge the bullet. Have I answered your question?
That's good.
Sort of by perambulation.
Yeah, I do that at times too. But well, oversimplify, treat them where they are, treat them as they are, give them a chance to do what they think is important, and if it doesn't work, then we try to do it a different way, but we don't tell him he's wrong. One of the stories I like about Vonn was somebody came up to him and they were doing some athletics, which was called track and field and athletics over there, and he had a kid who was a long jumper. He was a broad jumper, they now call it long jumping. And he was interested, he said he was interested in making, the visitor said, how are you going to make this guy a better broad jumper? And Vonn said, I'm not interested in making him a broad jumper, I'm interested in broad jumping, making him a man. I mean, so it's so subtle, but it's so critical. For instance, one of my pet statements is I try to teach. And I'm not a gym teacher. I'm trying to be a people teacher. And when you hear, I teach social studies, you don't hump up. Well, damn it all, you should. Because you are working with people in the social studies area. And I think that's critical. Because most of the work that you do with people does not involve thinking about what you're going to say. It's got to be ingrained here, and it's got to kind of automatically come out the way you think. And the way you talk is the way you think, and that short circuits it. I don't know if that's any better. Arnie? Oh boy, watch out. Let me turn around on this one. She's an old friend. When did we rattle heads together?
1971.
Oh, down in North Carolina. I had a blast, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what I want to say from then is something practical. Because in 1971 at North Carolina Outward Bound, Keith said in about less than 2 minutes what hypothermia, to be the practitioner and the teacher in the field of hypothermia. And before I say the 5 things he's talked about, with all the EMT courses and Woofer courses and literature that I read, I still teach it the way Keith had said it to staff and to adolescents, which are, and I'll read it because I'm a little nervous, 5 things to remember. If you're wet, cold, hungry, fatigued, or windblown, if you're one of those things, you're uncomfortable. If you're 2 of those things, you're courting hypothermia, and those are things you could do something about. Wet, change your clothes, hold on, etc. And that's the most practical and straightforward way to teach hypothermia, not temperatures and all of this stuff, I think, with youngsters and with my staff. The other thing is your wisdom. When people have asked me about starting programs or initiating a project, I always say, Keith King said, and I hope I got this straight, go slow but small, go safe, and go quality. And those are the criteria that I've used and have passed on to people who ask.
Thank you. I've added one more.
Well, tell me what it is.
If you have to advertise, you're not doing good a job.
Brad,
I have a question for you, Keith. This comes from an observation, so I figure.
we'll hear you.
So I've worked with a lot of outdoor instructors, and I've worked with you as a co-instructor with a group of people. And I think what's unique, I think all of us have this idea that we want to get people to think. We want to get people to learn. We're sort of committed to this, and but also there's sort of this hidden agenda that I have and many of us have that I'd like the people on the trip to like me. And I think what I've seen that's unique about you, I don't think you care about that. What has amazed me is that it seems to me that your goal in getting people to think is the whole goal. And I want you to comment on that because I've always been amazed by that. Like you want people to think, and you'll do anything to make sure that they think. And to me, this has always been very impressive.
I appreciate the comment, Fred. I don't give a damn whether you hate me or not. I remember going into a high school in Chester, Vermont in 1954 and sitting down at the beginning of the school year, and all the kids were sitting in the gym. And the new principal, he was the 5th principal in 8 years. This high school, 8 principals. He had been an English teacher. See, you don't like. I mean, he was a people teacher using English. And he said, he walked into this gym, and as I said, he was known in town. He was reasonably well liked by the general populace. He was a front and so on. And these kids, the first day of school, they got tumbled off the bus and he walked in and stood in the middle of the gym and just stood there. And I think he caught every eye in the place. And he put his hands in his pocket. And as he made the following statement, he kind of turned. I don't care if you hate my guts or not. I kind of hope you do. The real question of whether you and I have been doing the right thing is whether you choose to send your kids to Harold Vincent. I don't really care whether you hate my guts or not. But the real measure, thank you, is whether you send your kids to me. I'm not important, you are. I don't work for me, you don't work for me, I work for you. There's another one answer to that one. Who's next?
I'm going to take time for you to make a summary. And so I'm sorry I'm going to have to stop the question because I do want to honor that. First of all, I want to thank all of you. I'm going to let Keith be the last to speak. As you know, and as I've often been reminded, all of us have to be somewhere doing something all the time. We don't have the option of being nowhere, doing nothing. Ponder that for a while. And I think you need to be honored because each one of you, for some reason, got up and decided that this is where you wanted to be and this is what you wanted to be doing. And as long as people continue to show up and make those kinds of choices, I think we can make the kind of change that is needed. People stop making these choices and not being who you are and showing up for things like this, then we're going to be in a dire situation. So you need to be complimented for your judgment. And I want to thank you for honoring me and giving me an opportunity to sit in these wonderful chairs and just have another chance to exchange. And it's all yours. Take us out of this place today.
I would like to challenge you. The educational system, schools are broken. Yes. I don't think there's an awful big argument there. Can you hear me? Is this
That's better.
I think we have an obligation to fix it somehow. I do not believe the systems that people are coming up with or have been coming up with will get very far. Even expeditionary learning OB is basically struggling to grow because I think it involves too many big things. And it's too threatening to too many things, and some of those things are the bureaucracy and the people who teach from June and July and all that kind of stuff. I believe that the way to change things is one step at a time, one toe at a time, one person at a time. I challenge you. I dare you. I challenge you to pick a teacher. I believe probably there's no other single occupation in the North American continent has more people in it than teaching. There are probably more teachers than any other single occupation. Pick a teacher. Maybe one you know, maybe one you don't know, maybe one who is trying something and needs a little support. Pick a teacher, and once a week, at least, or average once a week, do something with that teacher or her or his classroom or gym or ropes course, maybe it wouldn't be. And take your values, your skills, your uniqueness, and help that person become a better teacher. Now, if there's 800 people here, that's 800 maybe better teachers. Half of whom will get excited, and half of the one who get excited will pass it on to somebody else. And if you do the same thing again next year, we might get someplace. Can you expend a little time taking a teacher to supper or lunch and helping them or go into their classroom? I don't mean read the book to the kid. That's neat, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the organic work of working with kids. Can you afford a little time making the world better? Gotcha? Second, I will be willing to, and this is not a condition of the first.
Go, Keith.
I would be willing to include you. I will reestablish my email newsletter, which usually is a half a page of something that I've either written or in the process of writing. I would like to invite you to send me your address on my email. I'll give you that in a minute. I will send you once a week or once every 10 days something. You agree to read it, at least. You don't have to respond to it. I mean, email-wise. You don't have to get back to me. I couldn't handle it anyway. But I would be willing. My commitment to you is, I will commit to you to attempt to get something out to each. Not everyone is going to be different. I'll just make a big mailing list. It'll be something maybe which is worthwhile and maybe's not, and that's your choice, and you can turn me off anytime you want. If you are interested, I will be interested, honored to send you some stuff. I have written a whole mess of stuff. I call it, Have You Ever Wondered? My email address is kvvk@worldpath.net. I'm also here until Sunday morning, and if I have nobody to talk to, and in the next 2 days, I consider my last hour a complete waste of time. I hope I have irritated you.
The Board of Directors spends time deliberating very intensely who would be an appropriate person to give an address to our organization. And each January, the Board of Directors picks a person to give the Kurt Hahn address. And in this honor, we picked a person, and I think this year was a success, you be the judge, who can help guide the organization, guide us all with our vision and with how we want to see the world different, because AEE has been here, and all the people like Keith King who help AEE grow, and grow in terms of our thinking and what we actualize in our practice. So thank you, Keith King, for your address today.
This morning. The workshops are starting in a mere 5 or 7 minutes. So if you need an alternative to a workshop, there's a bunch of kids